Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and whether or not we think it's worth the cost.
In this episode, we'll be playing Gunfire Reborn, the co-op roguelike FPS game where you will have to battle your way through hordes of different enemies. Be careful though, as at the end of each level, you will encounter one of the furious bosses that await you.
So the first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, Gunfire Reborn is in early access and available on PC as well as most consoles for $12.
So what exactly is the game? Well, Gunfire Reborn is an FPS roguelike game in which you will have to shoot your way through many different types of enemies. Don't worry too much though, as the game gives you tons of options to deal with your opponents. First up, let's talk about the combat, as it is by far the most important element of the game. The combat is very quick and changes quite dramatically based on what type of weapon you happen to be using. The game offers tons of different options, from bows to rocket launchers and everything in between. There are currently a grand total of 44 different weapons at the time of recording this video. However, this game is in early access and there have already been several additional weapons added over the course of development.
Speaking of variety, let's talk about the different characters within the game. Currently at the time of recording, we only have 4 available to us, but the developers do plan on adding additional ones as time goes on. Now, my personal favorite was the dog, as he used explosive grenades and did the most amount of damage with rocket launchers. He also has an ultimate ability that allows him to dual wield weapons for about 20 seconds. This makes him great at dishing out a large amount of damage in a very wide area over a very short period of time. However, though, each one of these characters are currently locked behind the game's progression system.
The progression system is pretty straightforward. You go into a run, kill things, and pick up essence. You then use that essence to get further into the talent tree, which will make each run progressively easier. On top of that, they also have an account leveling system in which every time you get a new talent, you will gain a level. Upon reaching certain thresholds up to 55, you will unlock one of the previously mentioned characters. They also take things a step further by adding an achievement system to unlock each new weapon, which includes things like kill X number of enemies to unlock this weapon.
Now, while you're fighting in Gunfire Reborn, you will also come across a few additional mechanics that may tweak the way your run goes. For an example, you have scrolls which can be found in chests along the way. These can do all sorts of different things, like make you heal for 1 HP every time you pick up a coin, or maybe it'll increase all normal damage you do by 35%. Unfortunately though, you will also find curse scrolls, which will give you a sort of debuff, such as 100% increased damage taken from traps.
There's even more, with merchants that will appear and offer you the ability to either upgrade your weapons for the remainder of the run, or buy ammo, health, and other miscellaneous items. If that wasn't enough, there are even vaults that you can go into and try and complete a mini trial in order to receive additional rewards. The best part of all is that this game is procedurally generated, so each run will have a little bit of its own flavor to it. Just remember that there are sadly only 3 levels in the game, which consist of a few different floors.
One of the great things about all this though is that this game can be played with up to 3 friends. The game will even scale the difficulty based on the number of players in your party. Now, if you do manage to beat the game all the way through on normal, fear not, as the game does have 2 additional difficulties, which are called Elite and Nightmare. I wouldn't worry about this too much though, as we found it a little bit difficult to even beat the game on normal. However, I'm sure some of you out there are absolutely amazing and will be able to beat the game on normal in your first try. If you are like that, just know that on Elite and Nightmare, all it really does is increase the stats of the enemies and reduce the stats that you have. Story-wise, it seems like there is little to none currently within the game. That is okay though, as the game clearly was not meant to be plot-driven, but instead to be progression-driven. Personally, I like that, as this game knows what it is and doesn't feel the need to add a pointless story, and instead spends its time working on its gameplay and its mechanics. It was also translated over from Japanese while we're talking about this, so do expect to find a few misspelled words or grammatical errors along the way.
So now let's move into the pros and cons section for the video. First up for the pros is that the combat feels fast and well made. It feels like there's always something to shoot at or dodge, as the game constantly pumps enemies into your screen. Next up is that the progression has plenty of depth. Everything from the in-run progression of your gear to the out-of-run progression of your account. Each one of the game's many progression systems help to make you feel as though you are always working toward the next objective. After that is that the game runs on almost any computer. This is a great game to play if you don't have a several $1,000 custom PC, and just to give you an idea here, the game only takes about 4 gigs of precious hard drive space and only requires 4 gigs of RAM. And last, the game just has tons of variety in weapons and scrolls. This is one of Gunfire's strongest aspects, as every time you do a run, you'll have different weapons and scrolls to choose from, which force you to try out new builds.
Now for the cons. First up is that the game gets stale rather quickly. We understand that this is a roguelite and therefore is going to have some repetition, but this game in particular does not offer many variations between each run. There are only a few different bosses in total and slightly different floors in each level, which cause the game to become quite dull after playing for only a few hours. Next is that the game has a problem with bad RNG. Again, we know this is a roguelite and RNG is going to be part of the process, but there were so many runs where we just got slowed down so much by simply having bad RNG. You see, each weapon in the game has different stats on it and different mechanics applied to it, and if they roll bad, you can be completely screwed for the rest of the run.
So now it's time for the rating for the game, and when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 that we spend on the game. So for this game in particular, in Gunfire Reborn, we would want to get roughly 12 hours of enjoyment out of the $12 that we both spent. And after putting 24 played hours into this game, we give it 7 out of 10 potatoes.
Yeah, Gunfire Reborn was pretty fun. It's a roguelike and it knows it's a roguelite. It doesn't try to sell you on some meaningless story, but instead focuses entirely on its combat, and it does it so well. The only downside, of course, is that the game starts to become rather repetitive rather quickly, and sometimes you can be having a great run just to have it turned over by bad RNG. When I find myself giving up intentionally just because I had bad RNG in order to start another run, it just doesn't feel good. Either way though, if you are looking for a fast-paced roguelite, then for this price, Gunfire Reborn is definitely worth the cost.
Now if you guys want more money-saving content, consider subscribing to our channel, where we release new videos every single week, where we spend the money so you don't have to. Make sure you guys smash that like button, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.